Now today we're starting the process of removing the engine from this 2010 Subaru Impreza. The passenger side head gasket is starting to leak, a very well-known problem with these Subarus. Now really, I think the advantage here is I'm doing this in my home garage. In other words, I don't have any fancy tools, my ceilings are only 8 feet. And really, if I could do it, so can you. Now, I already started the process. Just 2 days ago, I showed on how to really clean all this up. Remove the upper and lower radiator hose, the drive belts. Very simple, and if you need a guide on that, I'll include a link in the description box below. But I'm just going to continue and get this ready to pull. Now again, I'm just using basic hand tools. If you're not familiar with my videos, everything is just basic hand tools. In this case, of course, we need an engine crane and an engine stand. Also, very quickly, and I just want to start getting to this, but it's also important to note, this being an Impreza, many months ago I did the valve cover gaskets, and it was so tight. Right here's the frame rail. As you can see, it was so tight I had to jack up the engine off its mount to get enough clearance just to pull off the valve covers. So the point I'm getting at is there's no working room here for me to do the head gasket while the engine is installed. However, if you have a Forester or an Outback, chances are you may have enough wiggle room to do this job, the head gasket job. But that being said, it's, in my opinion, a lot easier if you just remove the whole thing. Now, very quickly, what I'm going to do before I pull the battery, I want to release the fuel pressure in the vehicle or in the system, in the fuel system. That's because right here, this is your fuel supply line and this is the return line. And when you remove this supply line, if you don't release the fuel pressure, this will squirt fuel everywhere. So I'm just going to pull the fuse. So right here is the fuse box. Okay, rotate it. Let me bring it over so you guys can see this. And right here, just give me a moment. Right here you'll see the fuse for the fuel pump. So we're going to pull this fuse, crank the vehicle. As you can see, I have my notes here ready to go for this procedure. But once we pull this fuse, we'll crank the vehicle. It will release the fuel pressure. And then once we get to this, I can disconnect the line and it won't make a big mess. So enough talking, let's get to it. So again, on the bottom right, this is the fuse for the fuel pump. Okay, let's crank the engine. Okay, disconnect the battery here. Going to reinstall the fuse. Place the cover back on and remove the battery. Now here in the Northeast, these cars get completely pounded. I imagine you'll see similar results if you live in the Midwest. So I'm just spraying some PB Blaster WD-40 and we'll remove these fasteners. And all of the tools that you'll see, if you happen to need anything, I'll have a link in the description box below to our Amazon affiliate site. Be careful when you remove this. As you can see, if this strap down touches both the positive and the negative terminal on the battery, you'll have quite a spark. Okay. We're now going to remove the air box assembly. In other words, the air filter all the way up to the throttle body. It's one massive piece. A few 10mm fasteners, some hose clamps. Also, whenever you come across any of these sensors and you need to remove the harness connector, right here is a tab where my thumb is. Press down on the tab and pull from the body. Don't pull from the wiring. If you rip these out, you're going to spend a lot of time just repairing it. So simply pull, press down on the tab, pull from the body. Okay? So 2 clips right back here where my finger is. There's a 10mm fastener. You just want to make sure you remove that. And just to show you where that lives, that fastener right there, you may have another fastener right here. In my case, it broke off some time ago, and we'll just keep on going here. So these are 10mm fasteners. Okay, then you have a rubber tube running to the valve cover. Another one on the passenger side. This pulls out. It should pull out. Hold on. There we go. And then you have back here, there's a hose clamp. Okay, easy enough. And it's always good practice just to, if you can, reinstall the fasteners in the same location. That way you won't have parts just lying around. Flip side is always label where these fasteners belong. We'll now remove the alternator. We have, let's see, we have a fastener right here. Now of course these are loose from removing the drive belts. Place that to the side. There's another one over here. I have an electrical connection back here. Okay, and then we have a little fastener right here. It looks like a 10mm. A little tab that we can use a needle nose plier. Oh, nope, it's a 12. Okay. Now the flip side regarding this harness right here, you can squeeze the bottom plastic tab to remove it, or it's just really just plastic teeth holding this on. You can simply do that. Whatever works for you. Really no wrong way to do it. And place this to the side. And then I'm going to use a very, very long screwdriver just to pry this out. Be careful, you don't want to break any of the plastic. The fit is incredibly tight. Really, really tight fit. Now I don't want to remove the refrigerant lines going to the AC compressor. I don't want that to escape in the atmosphere. Then I have to refill it, or really bring it somewhere to refill it. But that being said, what I'm going to do is just keep this intact and just remove the bracket from the engine block. So there's a fastener here, there, looks like another one here on the right, 12mm, and then we can just peel this to the side. Now I'm going to very quickly go over two different ways you can remove these if you don't have an impact gun or an air gun. In other words, these have never been removed since they built this vehicle 10 years ago, and they can be really, really hard, okay, to remove, as you can see. Now, if you just have 3/8 drive hand tools, you can place a lot of pressure here and nothing happens. Now, what you want to do is create a longer handle. You can use maybe a small piece of pipe. What I like to do is just grab an extra socket that's larger. The diameter is long or large enough to fit over the end of the ratchet, and then I just have an extension over that socket. Place it over the end, and there you go. Okay, So if you are using, you don't have 1/2-inch drive hand tools, just 3/8 drive, and you just have very basic tools, you can still do a very large majority. See how tight this is of the work if you just think it through. Oh, that hurt. Ow. Okay. Now what I would generally use is a 1/2-inch drive breaker bar. That works for me, and you can even see this is thread lock from the factory. It makes the fastener incredibly tight so it doesn't back out. That's the whole point behind thread lock. No thread lock there. Okay, no thread lock there. And it looks like there is just one more fastener at the rear. Right here. Now to get to that fastener, as you can see, it's a really tough angle. It's not just a straight 6 o'clock attack. It has to come down and then angle off a little bit toward the body of the vehicle. And this is when, take a look at the difference. You see how this is completely squared? There's no roundness to it. And then this one has some roundness to it. The whole point behind that is you can move the socket just by a couple of degrees, and that will allow you, in this case, to firmly fit over that fastener. Now this is what I would do if I was just doing this off camera and trying to get this done quickly. Again, this is a roughly 19-inch breaker bar. Place it here, 1/2-inch drive, make sure it's nice and firm. And there we go. Okay. So now this is free and clear. I can simply just remove this out of the way. I'm going to leave it the way it is just for the short term because we have to use the bracket later on. We have to remove the AC compressor from the bracket, but at least I have that maneuverability. Now we're going to remove the power steering pump. Now the fastener is holding on the power steering pump. We have 3, it looks like. One here. There's another one right there. And then a third one right back here. Okay, now right here you have an electrical connection. Just press down at the 12 o'clock right here on top, pull back, and then what do we have here? What these look like? Looks like 12mm fasteners. These were 14, by the way, for the AC compressor. So AC 14, these look like 12 to me. And again, this can be peeled off to make room. Okay, we're making progress. So now we're going to start the work underneath the vehicle. As you can see, I have jack stands holding up the vehicle on both frame rails. I jacked up the vehicle last night, and as a safety precaution, I tend to keep the jack stand here as well. I'm sorry, the floor jack. Just an extra layer of security. Now, the exhaust here on the driver's side, 1, 2, there's a third fastener right there. I've already sprayed down these fasteners with WD-40 or PB Blaster in my case. Passenger side, 1, there's another fastener right there. As you can see, it gets a little tight down here. There's the third one, and then there's a coupling right here, 1, 2, and there's another fastener. Just forms a triangle. Everything has been sprayed down with PB Blaster, so this is ready to go. I'm going to break all of these fasteners loose, at least at the cylinder head, using the breaker bar. Once I get over here, it will be a hand wrench with a 3-pound hammer. Do not forget PB Blaster or WD-40, otherwise these can snap on you. Very, very well no problem with Subarus. These fasteners just break all of the time. So again, 14mm socket, breaker bar, safety glasses. I'm sorry the lighting here isn't the best. I can grab a light in a second, but let me just quickly remove these. Slowly, very, very slowly. Okay. And the last one I'm just feeling for. I have an extension. And there we go. Now for this connection point, you can't fit the socket. It's too tight. But what you can use is just a 14mm wrench. Use good quality tools, by the way. Don't buy cheap stuff. It'll last you a lifetime. And then a 3-pound hammer. Okay. Forget going like this and banging your hand. It's a waste of time. Use a 3-pound hammer. And then make sure it's nice and loose. And then we have one more. Work. Right there. Okay. Now I'm going to remove these fasteners, place a jack stand here, remove the fasteners holding on the passenger side, and then this entire exhaust will come right down. Before we remove the exhaust, very quickly, you have an air fuel sensor and an oxygen sensor. You can leave these still attached in the exhaust pipe here. Just remove the harness connectors. You have 2 of them right here. Remove them, and that way, and you have some plastic tabs, you just take a pair of pliers and just remove them. But that way, when we drop the exhaust, we'll keep the sensors still attached and just make it as simple as possible. So this is the last fastener holding on the exhaust here. Okay, here we go. Okay, fasteners removed. Put these down here for the sensors. Trying to push it toward the front of the vehicle. It's a little tight. So I can pry this off here. Come on already, geez Louise. They usually don't fight you that much. I recently did a catalytic converter replacement video on a Forester, and it was nowhere near that tough. It just came off quite easily. This car just likes to fight me, it really does. As you can see, look at all this oil gunk. I mean, even these are starting to leak a little bit over here. These had gaskets. I mean, it's unacceptable. I'm still shocked that these cars, 10 years old, it's not very old, and the leaking head gaskets. I mean, the long-term build quality of these vehicles I'm not the biggest fan of. Now I'm going to spray down there's only one fastener holding on. This is the engine mount, driver's side, 14mm, just one fastener here. There we go. All right. Again, I'm going to use a breaker bar just to break these loose. Okay, before we go back up top and continue with the work, right here we have a frame rail. And take a look at this. There should be a grounding strap from this point to this point. Another one over here. frame rail from here to here. Now, it's completely cut. That tells me this engine was removed in the past. Now, I talked about this in the past that I purchased this years ago as a certified pre-owned Subaru vehicle. So I had the warranty and so forth up to 100,000 miles, but that tells me that this has been replaced. At least the engine was taken out before. Unreal. So let's keep on going here. This is the starter. We have a line running to the starter that will remove a ground strap and 2 heater hoses. So this is the starter line. Again, the wire running right to the starter, okay. A little hard to get on film. It's a tight spot. Draw it off. And these are the heater lines. Clamp. I like to use these vice grips. They're really cheap vice grips, but you have this needled end. That way you can just really hold down these clamps very nicely. And these just help break the hoses loose. Okay. Whoops. And also what I'm going to do very quickly, and then I'm going to wrap it up today and I'll continue tomorrow. I'm going to grab some paint. You can also use maybe some duct tape, but I just want to mark where this hose belongs. In other words, I don't want to inadvertently switch the hoses. So I'll leave a little mark right here and a little mark right here. Okay, so now I know that these two belong together. Right here we have the main engine harness connector. And what I want to do, let me zoom in here so you guys can see this. I just have a flathead. Pry this out, this comes up, okay? And then right here, again, flathead. Push that back. And that disconnects. Now this is the fuel supply line and the return line. Now to remove the supply line, you need a special tool, but before I do that, just have an old t-shirt here just to catch any fuel that may spill out. Now you need a special tool to remove this quick connector. These are inexpensive. Again, I'll have links of all the tools in the description box below to our Amazon affiliate site. Let me grab some gloves. Okay, also wearing safety glasses. So you take the tool, press it in like so. Okay. Now, if you do this procedure without releasing the fuel pressure that I did much earlier in the film, this would have squirted all over the place. So just release that fuel pressure, and then I'll just plug up the end so we don't have fuel just leaking out here. Now I still have some fuel leaking out of this metal line, so I just have a spare piece of hosing with a fastener on the end. That way it just doesn't make a mess and keep just spilling everywhere. I removed the clamp, as you can see, holding on the return line. Hold on. Just break it loose. Okay. And then I'm just attaching a hose clamp here to prevent the hose from sliding off. And then we have a brake booster line that we need to remove. You can remove it from the booster, you can remove it from the engine, whatever works for you, it doesn't really matter. And then to the left of the brake booster is the starter. Now, I was hoping to keep this in, but it looks like there are around 7 or so fasteners holding the transmission to the engine. And one fastener is right here, one of these fasteners, and the body of the starter is just blocking it. So once we remove the starter, I can loosen up those fasteners, and we just have to remove the throttle body, and we're almost there. Okay, super long fastener. Now the lower fastener, looking at, this is the driver's side axle or drive shaft. And then right there is the starter, and there is the fastener. Now I cannot hold the camera and remove this fastener at the same time, but nonetheless, this is where it's located. And I'm just going to use a hand wrench to remove that. And then you also have a black connector. This is attached to the solenoid. Let me just show you very quickly. You may get stuck on this. But right here, right where my thumb is, right here, press down and then pull back, okay? Okay, I had to put that on the camera there for a second, but right here is where that black wire lives, right in the solenoid. So now I'm going to start just loosening up the fasteners that hold the transmission to the engine. I'm not removing them just yet, but I just want to break them loose. So right here was the starter, and now I can get clear access to this first fastener. Again, 14mm socket, breaker bar. There we go. And then I have 2 more over here on the passenger side. Okay, so passenger side, here's the first fastener, breaker bar. Use a breaker bar, makes all the difference. Trust me, if you're doing this with just hand tools, basic hand tools. And not even that, a lot of times it's just faster, in my opinion, just to grab a breaker bar. Break these loose. Okay, the rest we can get from underneath the vehicle. And then from underneath the vehicle, again, right here is the diff. Right here is the driver's side axle. You have a fastener there, a fastener there. I'll do these off camera again because I just can't hold the camera at the same time. Okay, now if you're having trouble removing these fasteners, let me just show you the setup that I have. The breaker bar, it's a little tough to fit in there. So again, it's a 14mm socket. This is a 1/2" drive ratchet, and then I have one of these extensions. Just another socket over the end, and then another little extension here. Now, the flip side, if you still have trouble, you could always just remove, in this case, the driver's side tire, then just get a piece of pipe, and you'll have plenty of room. But I think I'll be able to remove this. So I can do this with one hand. Hold on. Oh. Hold on. I have to use both hands. Super tight. All right, I'm back. Now with 2 hands, really, it's a lot easier. But now, as you can see, we broke it loose. So right down here, these are the 2 fasteners. Hold on. Give you another view. Okay, so that's the top one, which I still have to loosen up. And that's the bottom one. Again, just a very, very long extension. And let's break it loose. Of course that happens as well, but at least it gives you an idea on how you can break these loose. Same with this one up here. I'll just break it from on top rather than going from underneath the vehicle. Really not too bad. I was expecting these to be a lot harder. The 2 lower fasteners near the axles, those are the hardest. But just, take your time. Really isn't that bad. We're now going to remove the throttle body. Pretty simple. You just have 2 coolant lines, one here, another on the passenger side. A couple of fasteners holding the throttle body to the intake, and that's it. Right here is a little tab. Okay, just press in, pull on the body. So now we need to remove some fasteners that are holding on the torque converter clutch. Now to do that, you're going to grab your 22mm socket, which is the fastener for the crankshaft pulley. Okay, you may still have it on. In my case, I removed it in a separate video. Hold on. Alright, you can also use, sometimes I may just jump to an adjustable wrench. Okay, you can also use this, doesn't make a difference. But what you're going to do, right here was the throttle body. And look directly below, and there's a service hole. There's a little plug where you remove the plug, and then you'll find a number of these 12mm fasteners that you need to remove. So I'm going to do that in a moment, but once you remove, in this case, the first one, you're going to rotate the engine, okay? Clockwise. Don't go counterclockwise. And you'll see, let me just grab this adjustable wrench. Makes it a little bit easier in my case, okay? So adjustable wrench. Okay, now take a look at the service opening. And there's the second one, okay? So you're going to remove, I believe there's 4 of them, but let me just remove one just to show you how I'm doing it. And then once I wrap up all of the fasteners, I'll tell you how many there are. So I figure I'll try to get this in 2 different screenshots. So let me first show you a zoom out approach. So again, I have breaker bar, 22mm socket. This is a 12 on a 3/8 drive. You can also use a hand wrench. Okay, and then what I'm doing, I'm going to push the breaker bar forward and the ratchet here, my left hand back, like this, okay? And I'll crack it loose. Now, you will scrape up your hand, so be it. It's just the way it is. So here we go. Get on this firmly. Okay. So I'm just going to keep on doing that a couple of times. Now ideally you would want a long, really I would rather have a wrench, a 12mm wrench with a long handle. I just don't have one here, unfortunately. There you go. And it looks like there are just 4 fasteners, okay? Okay. Now the service manual recommends removing the pitching stopper. So right here is the transmission case, and then the engine, it meets at this point. So really it's on the transmission case. I'm not sure why they recommend removing it, or actually they just state to remove it, but nonetheless, these guys engineered and built the car, so I will listen, obviously. Oh, let me grab that washer in a second. Now really I just have 2 more steps to pull the engine. Number 1 is, earlier we broke these 2 fasteners loose. I'm now going to remove them. There's also another fastener over here that I just broke loose right here. This is where the starter lived. And then I just have to reinstall the bracket for the AC, remove the AC compressor from its bracket, reinstall the bracket to the engine, because this is where we're going to mount the chain, and then hopefully everything goes well and we can lift this out of the vehicle. So far so good. It's making me nervous how smoothly everything is going. I hope nothing gets, we don't have any hiccups. We'll find out. Okay, so it looks like we're pretty much ready to go. Now, 2 things I just want to quickly note. Number 1 is, before you do this job, and this is a problem I ran into, make sure that you have an engine hoist. And that's because my plan was just to get to a point that we're ready to remove the engine, and then at that point I can run to Harbor Freight and grab an engine hoist. Well, the local Harbor Freight does not have anything, nothing in stock. So I called the 5 nearest Harbor Freights within 50 miles. Nothing in stock. Northern Tool is like 5 hours from me, so that was out. Fortunately, I found this off Facebook Marketplace for 150 bucks. It's a 2-ton hoist. If you have a 1-ton, chances are you'll be okay. Sometimes the booms are a little too short. In other words, this part, sometimes it's a little too short on the 1-ton, but these bumpers are sort of short, so I think you'll be okay with the 1-ton. The other thing, if you're curious on how this is all hooked up, you can just use a chain that runs through. It's not a large opening, but for the bracket for the AC, run a chain, bring it up here to, there you go, to the hook, and then in the rear, just grab another chain, This is where it mounts. If you're curious what these are 1/2-inch drive fasteners, and this is a load leveler. Again, it's not necessary. This is just what I happen to have. And also, thirdly, the stock position of the hood, it's too far down regarding the angle. In other words, the boom would strike the hood. So what you do is you remove, right here is where the stock location is, just remove the 2 fasteners, place it here, and now the hood is a lot wider. It's almost touching, again, these are 8-foot ceilings, no problem, and we'll be ready to go. The only thing I think I need to do very quickly is bring in this boom a little bit more. I think once I lift this up, I don't have a lot of room here to push this back, so I'm just going to adjust this. And there's also a jack underneath the transmission right about here, the diff, because you want to hold, you need something to hold that in place once you lift the engine out. Okay, looks like we're free here. Now I'm going to raise the floor jack underneath the transmission. I want to make sure that it's certainly on there. So we're almost there. As you can see, right here is the transmission. This is the engine. It does take some time to separate these two. As you can see, you'll find some marks here, and that's because very lately I was going around the perimeter with a mallet and just a chisel, just trying to find any weak point I can get to separate this. And once I was able to do that, it took a good 15 minutes. I was able to grab my large screwdriver, and now I can separate the two, okay? I'm pulling the engine toward me because the studs on the bottom are super long, and I don't want to score anything up. Let me make sure everything's disconnected. Just watch out for the AC line. Mine got snugged up on the rear back here where the heater hoses go. Just be careful. So that's how you remove an engine from a Subaru in your home garage. Now very quickly, this just has to be placed on an engine stand. I have a separate video showing that. I'm not going to do that right now. So if you need a guide, just take a look at that video. I just want to eat something before it gets too late, and then I'll set that up off camera. Also, 2 things to note. The AC line, which I'll show you in a moment, got hung up on the heater. Right here is where those heater hoses go. And if you're not too careful, you can actually break it. So just be careful when you do that. Also, lastly, the torque converter wants to walk out as you pull out the engine. So maybe have a friend just take a pry bar or a screwdriver, hold this in place as you pull out the engine. There's a tool you can purchase, but it's like 300 bucks. So just have a friend help you, and that's it. So I'll follow up in a couple days regarding disassembly. This has to go to a machine shop for the heads, put everything back together, and we'll be all done.